startled just a bit there. Okay. No, I was my breath. So yeah, a little sensey. Let's see here. We were going to start chapter 8 after we took a little break with chapter 7, and you start looking at chapter 8. But the seventh seal, when we're going to open the seventh seal, and we talked, well, in chapter 8, verse 1, and when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about an hour. About a half hour. You're right. I'm used to that light being there, but it's not there. About a half an hour. And I saw the seven angels who stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. Then another angel having a golden censer came and stood at the altar, and he was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke and the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it to earth. And there was noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So if you'll remember, when we in one of the sealed judgments, or one of the seals, we saw the Tribulation Saints, we call them, standing before the throne, and they asked, how long is it going to be, God, before you avenge us? And well, this is representative of those prayers that has gone up to heaven. And so God is now going to answer those prayers by bringing judgment on the wicked and bringing judgment on the earth. He's not only bringing judgment on the earth, but he's bringing judgment on Satan, and he's going to bring judgment on we call them the demons, or the angels that followed Satan. So basically you got a three-pronged judgment here. The earth and man's system, man thinking that man can run this earth better than God. Throughout the Bible, it's called the system of Babylon. It all started way back in, Genesis chapter 8 there, when they decided they was going to build a tower to Babel. In Babel, build a tower to heaven. They just thought they could do everything. They didn't need God. They could replace God. They could be God. They could go up to heaven. And so throughout biblical history, even Peter, when he in, I forget which book it is, at the very end he says to the saints in Babylon. Well, it wasn't Babylon. It was actually, he's talking about Rome and the Roman system, So the in Revelation, we'll get into that more, talking about Babylon, and Babylon basically is just man's system, that man knows how to rule this earth better than God. And I think I said those exact words Sunday in Sunday school. I said, man knows how to rule this earth better than God. And 2 John come walking by about that time, and he was like, what? Yeah, he's like, yeah, he said, yeah, what's going on in here? He says that's the way they do things on the news. They'll take that little snippet, take it out of context. Lee said that man knows how to run the earth better than God. Well, I did say that, but so before we get to that, we've had the seven seals, which these were the sign, and we went back into Matthew chapter 24, and we went back into Luke and 16, and we saw how Jesus said, hey, these signs have all got to take place before we have the coming judgment, before we have the return of Jesus, or his final return. And so we're going to have signs, and so these six seals were the signs that Jesus was talking about. However, people have always asked for a sign. We talk about the sign. When are these things going to take place? When is these things going to take place? And then Jesus said, well, when you see all this and you see this, and that's these seals that were opened up. But when you look at, I'm going to go to Matthew chapter 16. Quick. Matthew. So in Matthew chapter 16, verses 1 through 4, when the Pharisees and Sadducees came and tested him, asked what he would show them a sign from heaven. He answered and said to them, when it is evening, you say, it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and threatening. Hypocrites, you know how to discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the sign of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign shall be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah. And he left them and departed. So when it comes to the rapture, when Jesus is going to take away the church, we're only given one sign. And that sign is the sign of Jonah, meaning that Christ died, was buried, and on the third day, like Jonah, 3 days in the whale, Jesus 3 days in the earth, Jesus was raised again and then we know that Jesus, when he arose from the grave, he conquered death. And from that point on, there's not going to be a sign for what we call the rapture. Not really, but yes. Because the same way he says that we can discern the sky, we can look at the sky and say, looks like rain. Or we can say, there's things that we can do. We can see things happening throughout the earth, things that are going on. And when you read Revelation, and we've talked about this several times now, that the things that are going to take place, especially through those first 6 seals, we're far enough along that we can see exactly how it could happen. We could see how one person could rise to power. We could see how the economy can be controlled without currency. I mean, we can see how all of these things can take place. So when Jesus says no sign's going to be given except for Jonah, he's talking about, when the Son of Man, Jesus, when he is crucified, dies, and is resurrected, and of course in Acts chapter 2, when the Holy Spirit comes, then we have a method for salvation. But then you just keep watching things as they develop, and you will start to see the signs of how everything can fall into place. And so that is where we're kind of leading up to, is we're leading up to the signs of things that are going to take place here in chapter 8, because the stage is kind of set now. That being said, when we get into 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so far we can kind of say this is this is with some assurity. I know when we first started talking about, teaching Revelation and discussing Revelation, I was like, oh, no. Because there are some things that we just don't know. Or we might have we just cannot be, dogmatic. And so far we can kind of agree about everything that's happened, except for a few little things, that may be this or maybe that. But when we get into 8, and especially when we get into 9, now's when things get a little more gray. So in 8, when we're starting to open up, or the angels are going to start blowing these trumpets, we are going to start seeing a lot of destruction on the earth. Now, let me first say that let me do something here in Joshua. Maybe I can give you an example out of Joshua if I know where it's at, so you'll know where I'm going. Okay, let me see. Okay, so in Joshua chapter 3, it is when Joshua is leading the children of Israel, and they've come to the Jordan. And so in chapter 3, verse 13, and it shall come to pass as soon as the soles of the feet of the priest who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off, that the waters that come from upstream, and they shall stand as a heap. So it was when the people set out from their camp to cross the Jordan, with the priest bearing the ark of the covenant before the people. And as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and their feet of the priest who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all of its banks during the whole time of the harvest, that the waters which came down from upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Saraton. So the waters that went down into the sea of Araba, which is the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people crossed over opposite the Jericho. So you get a picture here that they've come to the Jericho, which is normally, especially this time of year, it's the fall of the year, the waters are up. And then when they get there and they put their feet in the water, that the waters are ceasing to run. That the waters are, it's become kind of, now it's not like the crossing of the Red Sea where it's kind of, God parted. On this, they have stopped, and the waters have heaped up here. In other words, they've dammed up here. Okay? Well, in 1912, in this same, pretty much the same area, the Jordan in this area is surrounded by really big steep cliffs. And these steep cliffs in 1912, one of these cliffs kind of fell down into the Jordan. And guess what happened to the Jordan? It got dammed up. And then it was made to where anybody that wanted to could just walk across it. Saying that, who caused the water to be dammed up when Joshua and the priest came to the river? God did. God caused what probably was one of these cliffs falling down and damming up the water. And in 1912 it happened again, and everybody could see it. So there would be some to say, now this had to have happened long before the priest got there, because it happened 50 miles upstream, because the Bible tells us it happened in Adam, and then they're down here. So it had to have happened quite a bit away, or quite a bit of time before. So a natural phenomenon took place caused by God. So when we start looking at the first three trumpets, we're going to be or first four, we're going to be looking at natural phenomenons. And some natural phenomenons, they take, but it's all under God's control. It's like God, if it was the cliff falling down into the water, God allowed that to happen so it would happen. If I was to write you a letter, and you read it, and who wrote the letter? No, the ink pen did. But who controls the ink pen? Well, or pencil, yeah. Pencil or ink pen. But who controls the pencil or the ink pen? I do. So you have to look at these things when we start talking about chapter 8 and some of what could these things that John saw, what could they be? And they could very well be things that we know about. It's just on a much more destructive scale. Now, that doesn't mean they're just going to randomly happen. It's all part of God. God's holding the ink pen. He's allowing these things to happen. But there are natural phenomenons that have happened before. It's just not coincidence. It's not coincidence that the Jordan River dammed up right when Joshua and it was all orchestrated by God. It may have been something natural that caused it. And so we've had those things. There's been the rains that fell just at the right time, Oh, they're acts of God, yeah, orchestrated by God. It's like when the water fell from, heaven when Elijah had called for the water. I mean, some would say, well, it was just rain. Well, it was rain that God caused. So, as we look at that, when we look at these first trumpets. In verse 6, so it says, the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to earth. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass were burned up. So we could say, all right, this could be a meteor shower. Possibly. Wormwood. We'll get to wormwood in a minute. Wormwood is down here in verse 10, or no, verse 11. Now I don't really. We need Stephen here. Stephen Roberts he loves like popular mechanics and all that, all the the space stuff and all that. But does anybody know what a CME is? Not continuing education, The common word for them is called a solar flare. You know he knows what I'm talking about. Now I've just got some notes written down here, but you can go to NASA's website and you can read this stuff. In 2012, there was a massive solar flare, a plasma ball, if you will. Now I can't get scientific and technical and tell you what it is. It's just the sun occasionally does this. It spits out these flares. Okay. Well, in 2012, it spit out a massive one. And because the earth rotates, around the sun once a year, when it spit it out, it missed the earth by 1 week. Okay. 2012. Like I said, this is not, you can go to NASA's website and read it. And there's all kinds of articles about what it would have done had it hit the earth. And then there's a lot of scientists saying, well, there's one prominent NASA scientist that say in the next 10 years, there's a 12% chance that we will have one of these hit the earth.
Have we ever had one?
Not to that magnitude of what happened in 2012. One actually hit, you have to go to NASA, but I think it was 1989, and it caused some localized damage in Canada. Just some localized. So what happens when this plasma, if you will, hits our atmosphere? It crystallizes the atmosphere so that you have hail and fire falling at the same time. Yeah. Now, John mentions blood. I don't know. Again, these are just theories as to what could happen. The event that took place in 2012 that missed the earth by a week, from what I've read, it would have caused over $2 trillion worth of damage. 20 times more than what Hurricane Katrina did. So, yeah, it would be pretty dramatic. But it's not something that's new. It's something that exists. But if God's in control, if to what is going to destroy a third of vegetation, it would have to be much bigger than the one in 2012. But any scientist will tell you it's possible. Though, the scientist that studies that kind of thing will tell you, and even some of NASA's leading ones will says, hey, there's a 12% chance we're going to have one in the next 10 years. Of what magnitude, we don't know. So just leave you thinking on that. So anyway, so when John sees hail and fire falling from heaven, well, it's very possible that this is what could happen. There's always been speculation as what happened at Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's what I was thinking.
Could be the same thing. So a lot of people say volcano kind of fits, but doesn't fit, So these things could happen. I mean, and again, you want to read about it, it gets a lot more technical as to how it works in the atmosphere and how it will cause both hail and fire to rain down. I mean, basically burning ice. Yeah. So we can get a visual, if you will, of how this could take place. So now again, we won't be here to see it, which is good, So yeah. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire. Now think about a mountain burning with fire. Sounds like a volcano to me. Was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Now, again, if you want to take the Bible literal, and it's blood, it's blood. Some will say that, well, it's lava. It's something caused by this volcano that has taken place. I won't argue either way. I don't think, I think if you want to be right there literal with it, we'll go literal. If you think, well, John doesn't know how to describe it, but hey, that's what he used, So I don't have a problem either way. Now, the problem is getting and teaching Revelation, there are going to be those that are very dogmatic and say, oh, no, it's got to be this. And I don't think you can be that way. I think you have to look at it a little bit. So when we look at volcanoes, now we know that there's been lots of volcanoes. Mount St. Helens out in Oregon, when was that? In the 80s, sometime in the 80s when it did its thing. It wasn't that bad, but let me give you one here. Let me go to Wikipedia. It's fairly reliable, In 1883, and I can't pronounce it, but it's Krakatoa. There you go. You know about it.
He knows more than we.
Okay. Krakatoa, Indonesia, in 1883. Now, there have been stronger volcanoes in past history, but in 1883 we had some, I don't want to say modern equipment, but we had some equipment to start recording things and being able to record. Supposedly there was one in this same area in the early 1800s that was even stronger than this one, but there was nothing to record it. And our history, at least here by the 1880s, there were photographs, but they were all black and white and pretty crude. But let me tell you a few things that we do know that happened on this volcano. It was so violent that the sound was heard 1,930 miles away, 1,900 miles away. It was also that it was said that the sound was so loud that it would rupture your eardrums 40 miles away. So you're 39 miles out, could still deafen you. Now there's no real death tolls estimates from 36,000 to 120,000 because giant tsunamis were created. This area wasn't all that was populated, but yet we didn't have a good idea of what the actual population. We were talking about Reelfoot Lake. When did we were talking about that? How an earthquake created Reelfoot Lake, but yet when it happened, there wasn't really, you didn't have. What-
population.
It wasn't massive population. You didn't have video cameras. There's nothing to really, so you have before and after pictures, but they're crude black and whites. And so it's hard to get the sound was claimed to have been heard in 50 different countries over the globe. Here's an interesting one. Over the next year, the Earth's temperature dropped by 1 degree.
Oh, this climate, people, I'm telling you what.
Yep.
There'll be some rough stuff.
Because of all the ash and everything that was put into the sky. And they said that the sky was blood red for months in certain areas, that the sun didn't shine, that it was kind of blood red. I mean, there's several paintings of artists that painted pictures of it, because again, you had photographs, but it's all black and white. You couldn't capture it. And so artists would try to capture, the other. I've not seen it, but it's very possible. So this is the tsunami. There were many ships that were destroyed. The tsunami was 120 feet high. So you imagine a big 120-foot wave, Well, if you want to go to Wikipedia, and you can see all the things. It affected rainfall. There was a lot of climatic things that took place. So the point of all this is John saw a burning mountain that was thrown into the sea. So maybe what John saw was a volcano that blew up, but one far bigger than the one that took place there. How you pronounce it? Krakatoa. So, interesting enough, y'all been to Yellowstone. I was a kid when I was there. They say that Yellowstone, if it was to ever blow up, it'd wipe out the United States. That it is so powerful underneath.
And there's so much activity.
Yeah, and there's so much. I don't believe Yellowstone blowing up will be what John sees, because I believe it'll be one of the volcanoes that are located by a sea. Because I'm going to take it literal that it was a sea. Now, some point fingers to outside of Greece in the Mediterranean Sea, there's a big volcano that occasionally spews a little.
But was Hawaii created by volcanoes?
I think so.
The land mass itself,
Yes. Yeah.
It rose from sea.
Yes. But that all took place before recorded history. So it is not hard for us to imagine this taking place. Catastrophically, it would be hard to imagine the damage and everything that it would cause, but it already exists. It already exists. It could happen. And I'm not saying it's going to be a volcano. I'm just saying that is a very likely scenario based on what's happened before. And then we get to wormwood. Then a third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of the water. The name of the star is wormwood. And a third of the waters became wormwood. Wormwood really means bitter. And many men died from the water because it was made bitter. So here we could have, it could be something, and we see something falling from the sky. So most, I guess, the people that study really Revelation, and they tend to think that this might be a nuclear something that's going to cause it, that something is going to come down and going to affect, because radioactiveness could do it. It's interesting. Anybody ever heard of Chernobyl? Because Russia is a closed society, we really don't know the extent of damage done when that thing melted down. But does anybody know what Chernobyl means in Russian? Wormwood. Is it a coincidence? It will translate wormwood, bitterness. Yeah. And people, I mean, some people died instantly,
Yeah.
but some people died
Diseases and
slowly, you know. Oh yeah, it's, I mean, we just don't, I mean, we don't really know the extent of what happened. No. It's all buried. It's all covered up. They weren't named it wormwood. The earth. Well, we'll send Bruce Willis up to destroy it, you know. Yeah. And then the fourth one, we won't get into when we get to chapter 9, it really gets, it really gets a little more conjecture. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened, a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. It's not that a third of the sun was taken away or a third of the stars were destroyed. It's just a third is failing to be seen. You know, it just says, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. Well, if you've had all of these calamities that have taken place, especially, you know, the volcanoes and the solar flares and the different things that has taken place, it's not really hard to imagine everything being darkened. And then once you do that, once you, let's see, what day was it? I guess it was Saturday. Whatever day it was, Saturday, I guess it was Saturday, when I was mowing the yard. It was kind of late in the evening, and it wasn't that warm. Saturday was kind of cool. You know, it was warm during the day, but this was out in the evening time, about 5 o'clock. And I didn't have on a lot of clothes. I don't know why, but that's the way I am sometimes. When I was out in the sun, it was comfortable. But when I mowed down there around by the trees, I was like, man, I need to go throw some pants on, I need to. And then I get back out in the sun, I'm like, oh, it's okay. And I get down in the trees and I'd be like, it's cold. When you put a blanket over that sun, whether it be from volcanic ash or from nuclear destruction or whatever it be, it's going to change that. It's not going to be global warming. All this global warming. We're in for global cooling. It is going to be a much colder. And again, so I'm gonna end with this. When we start chapter 9, this is when it gets real. This is bad because a third of the earth is being affected, and probably a different third every time. So it's this. Yeah, this is all. This is a worldwide. But when we get to chapter 9, it really gets bad because the demons are coming out of the earth and they are not going to play nice. So notice that it's been a 1/3. Everything's been a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Any idea why? I don't have a good answer. The only answer I could kind of come up with that makes a little bit of sense was in Revelation chapter 12, when you get to verse 3. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head, or crowns. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth. Now we'll talk more about that later. But this is talking about what, when Jesus said, I saw Satan fall from heaven. And we know that a third of the angels followed him. So we're talking third. Could it be that the reason that it's third is that, what does Galatians 6:12? Anybody know Galatians 6:12? We wrestle not with, but with, paraphrase, the powers, principalities of the air. So if we wrestle not with flesh and blood, and we wrestle with the principalities, and a third of them, fail, maybe that's why the judgment's on the thirds right now. I don't know. It's just, if anybody says they know exactly why it's third, no. We can just kind of, it just kind of makes sense that we got a third. So chapter 9 will be next, and we will be looking at these locust-like creatures that are going to come out of the earth and are going to be very, very nasty. Yes, they are going to torment. They're not locusts. John just says they're like locusts. These are demons. As we get into chapter 9, 10, 11, 12 on this veil between, the natural and supernatural, if you will, starts to become thinner. The spiritual realm. What do we call our realm? I guess we're reality. I don't know. I don't get into these science fiction movies. They'll tell you, you've got this realm and this, the physical realm, and then the spiritual realm. Well, the gap between this physical realm and the spiritual realm is narrowing quite a bit, because the supernatural, that spiritual realm, this is the evil spirits, are now having a much more control over this natural realm that we live in, the physical that we live in. And so we're starting to see the two kind of intertwine now, because these armies that are starting to take place are satanic armies, they're demonic armies, and they're going to attack Israel. But there's lots and lots of Bible verses in the Old Testament that describes all this that's going to take place, and so we'll look at quite a bit in Amos. I did have one other verse here when we was talking about wormwood. Let me turn to that real quick.
Going back to wormwood.
Uh-huh.
They're also predicting it's going to happen on April 13th, which is a Friday.
That's my birthday. We can't have it on my birthday. My birthday. Yeah, April 13th. In Amos chapter 5, when he's talking about wormwood, he says, "Seek the Lord and live, lest he break out like fire on the house of Joseph and devour it." Of course, we've already seen fire falling from heaven, mountain on fire falling, with no one to quench it in Bethel. You who turn justice to wormwood and laid righteousness to the rest on earth. And we'll be reading a lot in Amos, because Amos got to see pictures of this. And so and Amos didn't get a chance to read Revelation. So how did he know about wormwood? So because God had showed it to him. Oh, one other thing. When we were talking about the signs, I forgot to read you this quote. You'll find this interesting here. I was telling you about when Jesus said we know how to look at the skies and see what it's going to do. And we can see that our society and everything's kind of building up to what is going to take place during this tribulation period. Let me read you this quote from, he's the former Belgium prime minister, and he's one of the architects of the European Union. So just read it. Now this is his quote. He said, "We do not want another committee. We have too many of them already. What we want is a man of sufficient stature to hold the allegiances of all the people, and to lift us out of economic morass, unto which we are sinking. Send us such a man, and be he God or the devil, we will receive him. This was the Prime Minister of Belgium. So you see, when Jesus says, hey, you know how to read the sky, but when you get a world leader that starts talking like this, I just read the signs. You can kind of see how an Antichrist can come on the scene and lead, because you got very intelligent guys by the name of Paul Henry Spack that is looking for such a guy. Be he God or the devil, we will receive him.
Yeah.
I know. Well, Jesus said, we got to, you know how to read the signs. Yeah. False prophet. Yeah, they come like the Son of God, but not the Son of God. So, okay, I'll lead us in a word of prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Lord, thank you for this evening you give us. Just thank you for this time together. We just ask that you just be with us as we go this evening. Just ask that you be with the one that we went to visit and take a helping hand to this evening. Lord, we just ask that you just be with that individual, and we just ask that you just guide our lives in all we do. In Jesus' name we pray.